thanks for having us. This is Lara Butt, Senior Program Instructor. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, great. Who is this we've got here, Lara?
This is one of our 2 resident barn owls at the Raptor Center here at Mountsberg, and this is our male. His name is Shadow.
Shadow.
Yeah, Shadow is 5.5 years old.
He seems small up close. Is he a smaller version, or?
They're sort of a medium-sized owl here in the province of Ontario. We have 11 different species in Ontario alone, and being a male in the raptor world, they tend to be a little smaller than the females. He is about average size, and for a North American barn owl, they're typically larger than our European barn owls. So yeah, he does appear a bit small, but you can see his wings are nice and long. He's got big long legs for dipping down into tall grasses where he's hunting, usually in farm fields and grasslands, taking rodents for prey.
He's gorgeous.
He
Look,
is
the
beautiful. He's a very
wings.
active owl as well.
Yeah, and he's doing a little talking into the microphone.
He is. Just sort of a bit of a squeak there. Barn owls don't hoot the way that we typically think of owls vocalizing. It's your larger owl species that will resonate a booming hoot. All owls make different sounds. The barn owl actually has a bit of a scream or a screech sound, as well as sort of little squeaks and noises that they make depending on the season, if they're communicating with one another, if they're in a breeding mode, etc. And Shadow here is just giving us a little demonstration of that now.
His coloring's amazing. Is there a story behind how Shadow ended up here?
Yeah, so in the province of Ontario, barn owl populations have been decreased over several decades to the point where they are now beyond critically endangered. They are not yet extirpated, which would be sort of extinct from the range, being the province. Yet they are the most common owl on our planet. But here in Ontario, they've lost the majority of their natural habitat being grasslands, including farm fields, which we know we have lost much of here. And as well, their food source is compromised, being that they generally only hunt one main thing, small rodents, compromised by pesticides. So losing a population like this is quite vital because they are population control experts, making sure that rodent populations stay under control. We acquired our barn owls to teach about a species at risk here in Ontario. So he is captive raised. We acquired him at 1 month of age, which is why we know just how old he is. So he is captive raised, but he is still considered a wild animal. So he joined our education team 5.5 years ago when he was hatched in captivity.
So because the grasslands are missing, barn owls like Shadow are becoming more and more extinct, and that's the reason I have a ton of mice around my place.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
As we develop a lot of our areas that were both rural and some of our urban areas where you might have found barn owls nesting in hollows, old tree cavities, and barns themselves, as we develop those areas and more people move in and we lose the natural areas, of course you're going to wind up with a bigger rodent population and less of the creatures that are going to keep those populations down.
We could use some more Shadows in Milton, let me tell you.
We certainly could.
Yeah, there's a lot of rodents. Well, he is gorgeous. He's one of how many raptors you have here?
In total, right now, we have 34 raptors, 32 of them which are native to the province, and all of them are non-releasables. So they're here as a result of either an incident, an injury, or a circumstance like Shadow being captive raised for education purposes. And they're all here as non-releasable birds. So you can read their stories, you can learn about how they became injured, which unfortunately is mostly due to human impact issues. Certainly we don't mean for our impacts to be so great, but we know when it comes to nature and wildlife, humans do play a big role in the success or failure of native wildlife. So these creatures are here to give us a better indicator of what those threats are and maybe how we can change, make some better choices for their more successful future.
Right, and I believe too that the more we understand how our behaviors impact the wildlife around us, so then we can make better choices. Can you share with me and the viewers, what are some of the things that we can do or change knowing the impact that we're making?
Absolutely. One thing is, first of all, how we manage our neighborhoods in general, reducing things like pesticides that will impact the food source of native raptors, and using more natural products to get rid of problems like weeds or insects that, of course, we find unwanted. And we can plant native plants and encourage wildlife, keep around big old trees, keep around natural areas like the grasslands that they require in order to keep stable populations of raptors. For you and I, as just general public, there's all sorts of things. We can reduce our waste. We can increase awareness in your community, and maybe start to encourage people to use even some man-made structures like nest boxes and other areas in natural habitats to start to encourage those creatures to find homes again in urban and rural areas where you and I might live. So that's just one thing. We can, when I say reduce waste, it is typically garbage waste that can interfere with wildlife, but also the kind of things that we think simply are organic materials. I know that people often talk about throwing away organic things into nature and it just is going to break down or decompose. But whenever we put food waste into a natural area, it attracts animals. And when it attracts animals, those animals wind up in human areas much like roadsides. So if you think of an apple core, for instance, that might attract a possum to the roadside, and he might get hit by a car, and as a result, that's simply our fault. We'll meet another bird shortly where stories like that can impact on an even greater level. But for this creature here, keeping your roadside edges clean and clear, because they're often hunting rodents near the edge of the road. Owls are famous for hunting out of ditches, and of course rodents wind up looking for little bits and scraps of food that we may leave due to litter. So when it comes to garbage or waste, if we put them in the appropriate places and receptacles, we're going to keep the rodents away from the roadside and therefore keep creatures like owls and hawks from hunting in all the ditches next to roadways.
Should we look away for a little while, or?
He's gonna sun. Empty. Classic entry from one of our turkey vultures here at the park. This is our older of our two male turkey vultures that are residents of the Mountsberg Raptor Center. And this is Casey. And Casey is 21 years old. As you noticed, maybe when Casey first came out, he did two things which are very typical behaviors of a turkey vulture. He came out, he immediately opened his wings to get more sun onto his body to warm him up, feel those sun's rays, giving him some energy, and then he sort of crouched and peed. This is part of the lovely facts that we love to talk about regarding vultures. He pees down his legs to cool them off on a hot day. So this is one of the fascinating features, and gave us a great example just coming out here to do so. Notice he's extending his neck and looking to the skies above, maybe recognizing some of his cousins as they circle the skies, seeking out their food, which of course we know for vultures is dead prey items. Turkey vultures are your scavengers of the raptor world, and they're here to provide us an incredible service. And that service is to rid our environment of dead and decaying cases of other animals, and ones that may have died of disease, something that could be spread through the environment to you and I, other wildlife, and even your pets. So when it comes to turkey vultures, they play an incredibly environmental role as the cleaners, or as their name interprets, the cleanser. So these creatures here can eat things that may carry disease like anthrax or botulism or rabies, cholera, and salmonella. And having those diseases removed from the environment, for these creatures here, again, it's a wonderful service provided, and they're simply recycling the animals that they found already dead. Now, if an animal kills something, as it is a predatory animal, and they leave behind a carcass, he will as well clean up the leftovers from that food. Now, you might notice as Casey's wandering around here, first of all, he's not flying. Second of all, his right wing droops from his body, and you can't see him fully extended. Casey is a victim, suspected victim of the roadside. So we believe that Casey, in his first year, which is generally the year of least experience and most risk for raptors, their survival rate is already difficult. It's already a pretty low statistic. In most cases, raptors have about a 25% chance they'll survive till they turn 1. For Casey here, we suspect that he was a young vulture learning how to hunt and come across roadkill, which is often a food source for raptors and vultures in particular. But he doesn't have it in him to move that food item. He can't grip, grab, or carry that food away. It may be large, it may be too heavy, and it's not in his nature to drag it off into safety. So likely him scavenging, finding food, being a young inexperienced bird, he then could not escape the fast movement of a car coming along. So again, back to the stories when we talk about things like keeping litter away from the edge of the road, or some of our organic materials. Those organic materials will attract animals that might want to eat them. If they get hit by cars, in turn you're now attracting a vulture to that road itself. So for Casey here though, he's very lucky, and we suspect that he may have been fed or helped to be kept alive for a short period of time after his injury, because he was found alone once his family had migrated south. So they tend to leave by about mid to late October, heading as far as places like Brazil and Argentina, and heading out on a really long journey to areas which they can find food all year round. So for him being left behind, obviously unable to fly, he was lucky to be discovered, rescued, and wound up in rehabilitation. Casey could not be repaired as his injury had already started to heal and healed incorrectly. So for him, especially, birds have hollow bones. They're very fragile, difficult to repair, but Casey was lucky to be found, lucky to be rescued, and we are certainly lucky to have had him for the last 20 years. Casey is a great part of our education team here, helping people to understand why they have this look and appearance. And for him, he has a general look that some people go as far as to say they're unattractive. We love vultures. They're fun. They're interesting, they have great stories to tell, they do all sorts of awesome stuff in our environment, and they do have a unique look, but it's simply to keep them clean. So while his head may look bare, he does have a short brush cut of fine feathers, but this allows him to dig his head deep into the carcass of the critter he finds and keep himself clean and free from bacteria at the same time. He peed down his legs earlier simply to cool off, as they are a warm weather bird. He may not find water readily available, and his food source is generally dry by the time he comes across it, where most raptors eat whole food items which are full of fluid. So for him to pee down his legs is just giving him a little refresher from the heat, and of course this creature's unique look attracts the sun with his dark colors, and again gives him that abundance of energy he needs to get his day started. I love the opportunity for you to be here today to ask us such important questions about our environment, the creatures that inhabit our environment and their needs, as well as what we can do to protect them. When it comes to the raptors in general, so your 27 birds of prey that we have here in the province of Ontario, what the center here operates is an education center. So here they are representing their wild population so that we can have an experience, learn more about the species, see what status that they have in the wild, what affects them, both human impact and natural impacts, and how we can better protect that. So the The Raptor Center here gives you an opportunity to learn, to experience, to encounter some of these creatures that you may otherwise never get a chance to see, certainly maybe not this close, and gives you a takeaway so you can go home and adapt some of those lessons you learned from the unfortunate circumstances some of our wildlife face, and maybe again look to change some of our behaviors that will help to benefit our native creatures.